Something is moving beneath the forest floor. You can't see it yet, but you can hear it. A faint, dry rustling, like wind through paper, except there is no wind. The trees are still. The air is heavy with heat and moisture, and yet the sound grows. Then you see them. A river of living bodies, moving in a column so perfectly organized, it looks mechanical. Hundreds of thousands of them, some carrying pieces of leaf 5 times their own size, held aloft like green sails. Others walking in the opposite direction, empty-jawed, urgent, already headed back for more. And underneath all of it, beneath the roots and the soil and the centuries of decay, a city is breathing. It has no mayor, no architect, no blueprint anyone drew, and yet it functions with a precision that has outlasted empires, survived ice ages, and operates today with an efficiency that modern engineers have spent decades trying to understand, and still cannot fully replicate. This is not a metaphor. This is not science fiction. This is Tuesday morning in the Amazon rainforest. And the civilization beneath your feet is older than anything your civilization has ever built. There are more than 20,000 known species of ant on this planet. They live on every continent except Antarctica. They have been here for at least 140 million years, which means they watched the dinosaurs fall, waited through the long silence that followed, and kept going. Combined, the biomass of all ants on Earth is estimated to rival or exceed that of all wildland vertebrates. Every single one of them. Every deer, every bear, every lion, every elephant, outweighed by insects that on average are smaller than a fingernail. But even within that staggering world, 2 species stand apart. The leafcutter ant and the army ant. They are in many ways opposites. One builds, one destroys. One is a farmer, one is a soldier. One constructs the most sophisticated agricultural systems in the non-human world. The other wages war on a scale that makes the word raid feel laughably inadequate. And yet they are bound by the same ancient truth that governs every form of life on Earth. You either find a way to feed yourself, or you disappear. Both of them found a way. The ways they chose will astonish you. Let's start underground. Leafcutter ants, belonging to the genera Atta and Acromyrmex, found primarily across Central and South America, build colonies that can house up to 8 million individuals. The nests themselves can extend more than 8 meters deep into the earth, sprawling across hundreds of square meters, containing thousands of chambers, each with a specific function. Waste disposal, egg nurseries, royal quarters, and most importantly, gardens. Not metaphorical gardens, actual gardens. What the leafcutter ant carries on its back is not food. This is perhaps the most important misconception to correct, because it changes everything about how we understand what these animals are doing. The leaf is not a meal. The leaf is raw material. It is the substrate upon which the ant cultivates a fungus, specifically a fungus from the family Lepiotacea that the colony has been farming in an unbroken lineage for approximately 50 million years. 50 million years. To put that in context, our earliest hominin ancestors appeared roughly 4 to 7 million years ago. Agriculture, as humans practice it, the deliberate planting and cultivation of crops, is approximately 12,000 years old. The leafcutter ant had already been farming for 49 million 988,000 years before the first human planted a seed. They did not stumble into this. They perfected it. To understand how the leafcutter became what it is today, you have to go back to a moment of evolutionary pressure so severe it forced an entire lineage of insects to reinvent how they eat. About 50 to 60 million years ago, the ancestor of today's leafcutter ant was, like most ants, a generalist predator and scavenger. It ate what it could find. But something shifted. The precise ecological trigger is debated among researchers, but the outcome is clear. At some point, a population of ants began cultivating fungus, likely starting with broken plant material that fungus naturally colonized. This is not unusual on its own. Dozens of ant species cultivate fungi. What made the leafcutter lineage extraordinary was what happened next. Over millions of years of co-evolution, the relationship between ant and fungus became so intimate, so mutually dependent, that neither could survive without the other. The fungus these ants grow, sometimes called the ant garden, exists nowhere else on Earth. It has never been found growing wild outside a colony. It is entirely dependent on the ants to survive. And the ants are entirely dependent on it to eat. This is not farming in the casual sense. This is a co-evolutionary lock-in. Two species fused by time into a single functional unit. But the ants didn't stop there, because any farmer will tell you, where there is a crop, there is disease. The greatest threat to a leafcutter colony is not a predator. It is a fungal pathogen, specifically a parasitic mold called Escovopsis, which attacks the garden fungus and can destroy an entire colony if left unchecked. The ants have been fighting this pathogen for millions of years, and their solution is one of the most sophisticated biological defense systems ever documented. Leafcutter ants carry on the surface of their bodies colonies of bacteria, specifically actinobacteria of the genus Pseudonocardia. These bacteria produce antibiotics, natural, targeted, highly specific antibiotics designed over millions of years of evolutionary pressure to suppress Escovopsis without harming the garden fungus. The ants, in effect, are living pharmaceutical laboratories. Their exoskeletons are coated in medicine. And then there is the question of the leaf cutting itself. A leafcutter worker doesn't simply bite a piece of leaf and carry it home. It selects leaves based on chemical cues, cutting at specific angles, optimizing for the size and weight it can carry relative to its own body mass. The cutting produces vibrations in a specific frequency range, and researchers at the University of Bath discovered that these vibrations are not accidental. They are signals. The vibrations travel through the ant's body and act as a kind of drill assist, helping the mandibles cut more efficiently. The ant is using its own body as a resonance tool. Engineering. Inside an insect brain the size of a grain of salt. But perhaps the most humbling aspect of a leafcutter colony is not any single behavior. It is the structure of the whole. A mature atta colony contains workers of at least 4 distinct size classes called castes: minims, minors, medii, and majors. Each caste has a different role, a different body shape, different mandible geometry, different behavioral programming. The smallest, minims, are roughly 1 to 2 millimeters long. The largest, majors, sometimes called soldiers, can be over a centimeter. The size difference between them, scaled to human proportions, would be like comparing a child to a basketball player. And yet they move together as one organism. The word for this is superorganism, a term coined by entomologist William Morton Wheeler in 1911, and one that scientists continue to refine a century later. The The colony in this framework is the organism. Individual ants are more like cells than individuals. No single ant understands what the colony is doing. No single ant holds the plan. And yet, the colony plans. It adapts. It solves problems. It responds to environmental change in ways that look, from the outside, disturbingly like intelligence. Where does intelligence end and emergent complexity begin? That question does not have a clean answer. Now, the other ant. If the leafcutter is civilization, patient, agricultural, architectural, then the army ant is something older, something rawer, a force of nature wearing the body of an insect. There are approximately 200 species of army ant spread across the tropics of the Americas, Africa, and Asia. In the Americas, the most studied is Eciton burchellii, the swarm raider. In Africa, the most feared is Dorylus, the driver ant, sometimes called the siafu. Both operate on the same terrifying principle. Movement is survival, and the swarm is everything. Army ants have no permanent nest. They are nomadic by nature, by necessity, and by evolutionary design. A colony of Eciton burchellii can contain between 300,000 and 700,000 individuals. A colony of Dorylus driver ants can exceed 20 million. 20 million animals moving together, consuming everything in their path. When an army ant swarm moves, the forest notices. Birds follow the swarms, not to escape them, but to feast on the insects, spiders, and small vertebrates that flee in panic from the advancing front. These birds, called ant-following birds, are so specialized that some species have lost the ability to forage independently. They need the ant swarm to hunt. The ants have, without intending to, created an entire ecological phenomenon around themselves. The swarm is not just an event, it is an ecosystem. But here is where the army ant becomes genuinely difficult to explain with the language we normally use for animals. During a raid, scout ants move ahead of the main swarm, laying pheromone trails. The swarm follows these trails, branching and rebranching, until the raiding front becomes a fan-shaped network hundreds of meters wide. In the center of the swarm, a system of highways forms spontaneously, outbound lanes on the edges, inbound lanes in the middle, carrying prey items back to camp. No ant manages this traffic. No ant designed the highway system. It emerges every single time from the same simple rules followed by every individual. Follow the pheromone, avoid collision, keep moving. The result looks, on film, like a transport infrastructure. It functions like one. Researchers who have studied army ant traffic have noted that the self-organized lanes are, in terms of flow efficiency, comparable to human highway design. The ants arrived at the same optimal solution, without calculus, without engineering degrees, without any ant having the faintest idea what a highway is. This is called stigmergy, a form of indirect coordination where individuals modify the environment and those modifications guide the behavior of others. It is how termites build cathedrals. It is how slime molds solve maze problems. It is, some researchers argue, a form of distributed computation. Information processing spread across thousands of bodies with no central processor. The swarm thinks. Not the way you think. Not with a brain you can point to. But the computation is happening. The problem is being solved. The answer emerges.
Army ants sleep, not individually, as a colony. And the way they sleep is one of the most remarkable self-assembly behaviors in all of biology. At the end of a day's raiding, when the colony halts, the ants form what is called a bivouac, a temporary nest made entirely from their own bodies. Worker ants link legs and mandibles, forming living chains, webs, and walls. The queen and her brood are sheltered at the center, insulated by hundreds of thousands of bodies. Temperature inside the bivouac is regulated by the movement of the ants themselves. When it gets too cold, they cluster tighter, generating heat. When too warm, they
loosen, allowing airflow. The nest has no walls, no fixed structure. It is pure living architecture, built from the bodies of the builders, assembled in minutes, dismantled the next morning, and rebuilt somewhere else the following night. Engineers who study lightweight adaptive structures have looked at army ant bivouacs for inspiration. The way the ants distribute load, the way they form self-supporting structures without a scaffold, the way the architecture responds in real time to environmental conditions, it poses problems in material science and structural engineering that we are still trying to solve with our most advanced tools. An ant figured it out 50 million years ago. There is a phenomenon called ant mills, sometimes called death circles or death spirals, that occurs when army ants lose the pheromone trail and begin following each other in a closed loop. The spiral can be enormous, containing thousands of ants, and it will not stop on its own. The ants follow the rule, follow the trail, and the trail leads back to itself. And so they walk and walk and walk until they collapse from exhaustion and die. It is one of the more haunting things you can witness in the natural world. Not because it is cruel, but because of what it reveals. The same rule that makes the army ant so extraordinarily powerful, follow the collective, trust the swarm, is also the rule that can trap it in a loop it cannot see its way out of. There is a human lesson there, if you want it. What does it mean that insects with nervous systems containing roughly 250,000 to 1 million neurons, compared to our 86 billion, have independently solved problems that occupied human engineers for generations? Agriculture, antibiotic production, traffic management, self-assembling architecture, collective computation. Not solved clumsily, solved elegantly. Solved in ways that, when we examine them closely, often turn out to be optimal, as if the mathematics were always there, waiting, and evolution founded by pressure rather than by thought. The leafcutter colony is often described as the most complex animal society on Earth after our own. But the more we study it, the less certain that word "after" becomes. Complexity is not the same as intelligence. Intelligence is not the same as consciousness. And consciousness, whatever it is, may not be the apex of cognitive possibility, just the form that cognitive possibility took in one particular branch of the vertebrate tree, on one particular planet, over one particular stretch of geological time. The ant does not know it is remarkable. It does not know anything in the way we use that word. It follows chemical gradients. It responds to vibration and touch and concentration. It has no theory of mind, no self-model, no concept of the colony it serves. And yet, the colony it serves has survived for 50 million years. Our civilization, in its current form, is roughly 10,000 years old. Our agricultural civilization.
the one we are so proud of. The math is uncomfortable. There is a question that researchers at a number of universities have begun taking seriously in the last decade, and it is this. If we discovered a civilization on another planet that had built cities, developed agriculture, managed disease with pharmaceuticals, and organized labor across millions of individuals with near-perfect efficiency, would we call it
Intelligent? We would, without hesitation. Every one of those things exists in a leafcutter colony, operating at this moment in forests across the Americas. We do not call it intelligent. We call it instinct. And the distinction may say more about the limits of our definitions than about the limits of what the ant is doing. Go outside tonight, if you can. Stand somewhere with soil beneath your feet. Maybe grass, maybe a garden. Somewhere beneath you, in all probability, something is moving. Maybe a small colony, a simple nest, nothing like the empires of the Amazon. But the same basic logic, the same ancient algorithm, the same unbroken chain of continuity stretching back through geological time. Before the Rocky Mountains existed in their current form, before the Atlantic Ocean reached its current width, before the first mammals had figured out how to be warm, the ants were already working. They do not know about us. They have never needed to. They have outlasted every mass extinction event of the last 100 million years, absorbed every climate shift, every continental rearrangement, every catastrophe the planet has served, and continued, without interruption, to build and raid and farm and move, as if time itself were just weather. We arrived late. We built fast. We are loud and bright and certain of our importance in a way that probably does not survive a long enough view. Somewhere beneath the forest floor, a river of bodies is carrying green sails through the dark toward a garden that has not stopped growing since before our species existed. And it will almost certainly be there long after we are gone. That's not a warning. It's just the mathematics of 50 million years, and the most humbling arithmetic on Earth.